Hi, friends. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sami Cone. I'm joined by my friend Danyelle Little. Danyelle, it is beautiful to see you today.
Thank you for having me, Sammy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we started this conversation on the Sami Cone Show and had not nearly enough time to even really start it, hardly. I felt so inadequate in what we were able to do. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me today to continue our conversation on unity, on race, on reconciliation, how to talk to your kids about everything going on in society, but really I want to take the time to dig beyond that. So before we get into it, can you just take a minute to tell us a little bit about yourselves and some of the wonderful things you do?
Oh, sure. First of all, my name is Danyelle Little. I run the lifestyle website, thecubiclechick.com, which focuses on working moms, helping them get the most out of their personal and professional life. I've been a working mom for most of my life, so that is pretty much all I know. And I know it could be a struggle trying to juggle everything. So my site is a respite for you to get some tips and tools on how to work smarter, not harder, and also, dive into yourself and self-care and the things that you need to do to keep yourself happy. So that's basically what I do. I've authored a few books. I also have a podcast as well called Work It Podcast, which is also an extension of thecubiclechick.com. And if you have time, I would love for you guys to go and visit the site and poke around and see if anything that interests you.
Yeah, you're very humble. Yes, please go check out. I mean, again, just the resource that you provide, I know has helped me, has helped so many, and there's so much that you offer. And so the fact that you're willing to have this conversation, I mean, you shared with me even when I asked if you'd be willing to talk about this. Do you mind just sharing why you were willing to have this conversation? You really almost, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but almost felt a calling if the opportunity arose to
Yeah,
talk about this.
absolutely. Well, for me, oh, I'm so sorry about
No worries. It's life.
that. Yeah. For me, race has always, obviously, as a Black woman, but as a Black girl growing up, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So that just lets you know, Phoenix, Arizona, mid 80s. And there was just a lot of questions from my white friends. I was always the only Black girl in the
Mm,
class. And there was always questions about race. And back then, I thought it was cool that they wanted to know more about me. I thought it was
mm.
cool that they were interested in when we went to the pool and my hair shrunk up. They wanted to know why that was. It was
Yeah,
cool. It was cool that when I went to slumber parties and I had a bonnet on, they would say, "Well, why are you sleeping with a bonnet?" Like when you're young, you don't mind answering those questions, right?
right.
And I knew that they didn't know because I was often the it was Phoenix, Arizona. I was the only Black girl in the class, sometimes in the whole grade. And so I understood that. But
Can
as
I
we
just pause right there and ask you, like, I don't want to gloss over that fact because so many of us, especially that are white, I mean, just can't even I I think of that so many times. Like, what can you just go into the emotion of what that was like? I mean, I don't expect you to be able to describe it fully, but I just feel like that's something that can't be glossed over quickly.
well, I will be honest with you, it didn't bother me.
Hmm.
Um, let's see, when I moved to Phoenix, I was 7 or 8, and I stayed
Okay.
there until I was almost 15. So it didn't really bother me. I looked at it as they're my friends and they are interested in about me and my culture.
Okay.
I didn't look at it as, oh, they're you know bringing out or asking questions like I'm a an exhibit at a museum or something like that.
Hmm.
Like I really just thought that they were genuinely interested, and I wanted to share with them. There was one time I got braids, and I came to school and they go, "How did you get your hair to grow that fast?" I said, "They're braids." And they're like, "Well, how do you do that?" And I wish I could do that to my hair and all kinds of things. So it was very innocent.
Mm,
I looked at it very innocently, and I think
right.
they did. I don't think that there was a component of they were making fun of me or they were trying to make me feel different. It just was they had these questions, and because we were young and we didn't overthink in our heads, they just
Right.
asked me questions, and it seemed natural and normal. And as we became friends longer and longer, then the questions kind of went away because they kind of
Mm.
got they knew me, they got to know my family, they got to know my mom and my dad. And so it wasn't like that curiosity, but at the beginning it was. But I never looked
Sure.
at it as, oh my God, I can't believe that they're asking me these questions and things like that. Because we're young and no one has really, or no one told me, and I don't think anyone told them at the time, that there was something wrong with them asking those questions, or there was something wrong
Right.
with me answering those questions. But as I got older and involved and I moved, it seemed like that line of communication that we had when we were little was no longer there. And
Mm.
that my white peers, my white girlfriends, they wouldn't ask me those questions. And if they did ask me those questions, they would always preface it, well, I'm not trying to be this, or I'm not trying to be
Mm.
racist. I just want to know. And it was almost like we were older and we had heard some things, and we found out that it wasn't quote unquote appropriate or comfortable to have those discussions. And
Sure.
I think that's the sad thing about it, because when you're little, you don't think about if it's uncomfortable or not, right?
Right.
You ask the question because you want to know.
Right. There's no filter.
Yes, when you get older, then you think of ulterior motives and what are they trying to do?
Mm.
And are they going to use this information against me? And are they looking at me like a science project? And are they being racist? And so those are the things that evolved later. So it's I say all that to say we stopped having the
Mm.
conversations. And some of us never had those conversations even when we were younger. And
Right.
so now we're, older in our 30s and 40s, and it's like there's all these questions maybe from you, in your mind. I'm talking about all these questions I
Mm.
want to ask but I don't feel comfortable asking. And then
Right.
for me it could be there's all these questions that I want to answer, but I don't want to be the poster child for all black people in America.
Of
So
course.
it's that complication. But whether it's uncomfortable or not, you still have to have the conversation. Like when you
Mm.
talk about your children, to your kids, about the birds and the bees, about sex,
Yep.
it's not a comfortable conversation, but you have to have it, right? Because if you
Yeah.
don't have it, then other things could happen that could could make it even worse than not even being
Right.
up, open and honest. So I think that that's how we have to look at it. We have to stop being afraid of uncomfortability and get uncomfortable, because what's happening in my community, what's happening to black men and women in America is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It is uncomfortable. And it's time that we all face it. Like it's time that we all talk about it, that we all put it out there, and we don't make it that, well, I don't want to talk about it because this or that. It's time to get uncomfortable, because I think that until we do, nothing is ever going to change, and it's going to keep happening over and over again.
Yeah, I agree. I even said I was talking to a white girlfriend yesterday, and I just said I almost feel bad, and I appreciate that we have a relationship where you know my heart and I can say things, but I'm like I would if someone asked me how to talk to white people, I'm like there's so many different I'm not the like you just said, I'm not the poster child for white people. I mean, to try to put an entire race on one person's shoulders is dangerous and monumental in so many ways. And yet, like you said, we have to start somewhere. So I want to come back to having adult conversations, but let's start with the conversations with our kids. And as you said on the show, it really starts with listening before you even speak. Isn't that right?
hmm So when I talk to so I have, just to put in context, I have a
Yep.
16-year-old daughter and I have a 26-year-old son. So of course my conversations with my 26-year-old son are a lot different than they are with my 16-year-old
Right.
daughter. But I always, before I dive into those waters, I always take their temperature, ask how they're feeling,
Mm.
for my son, I said, are you taking care of yourself? Are you doing something in self-care? Because he's
Mm.
protesting in Los Angeles and I want to make sure that he is taking care of himself mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So I ask those questions first before I dive into whatever it is I'm talking about as it relates to race. And I think that for me, with both of them, it's more important for me to listen. This is not a teachable moment, right?
Mm.
Like
Hmm.
the teachable moment is what happened. to George Floyd. The
Hmm.
teachable moment is what happened to Trayvon. Like, there's nothing that unknown. I don't have to rehash that, but I want to know how they feel. I want them to know that I'm a person that they can talk to, and I want to know how they want to go about making that change, taking action if they want to. So my racial conversations are more about me listening to them and answering their questions than me sitting on a pulpit and talking to them. If they were younger, and when they were younger, I know when my son, one of the first things race conversations we had is someone asked him why he was so dark, and he was probably 4, and another kid said, "Well, why are you so dark?" And so we had to start having those conversations. So when they're smaller, it's a little different. But I still think that no matter the age, that the questions, you should listen first, and let them ask you questions, or let them kind of guide where the conversation goes, because
Sure.
you want to make sure that you are respecting um, their boundaries, or respecting their needs, respecting their emotional and mental health. Um, so all that kind of plays a part in the conversation, um, at least for me and my kids.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, we both have sons, and
Mhm.
I have a teenage son. I mean, regardless of the age, you know as well as I do, sometimes it can be harder with boys and girls to get anything other than I'm
Mhm.
fine. I'm okay. So how if, like you said, and a lot of our kids, especially if they are younger, may not even have seen the videos. Younger kids may not be watching the news. They don't know. How do you know, I guess ask the next question beyond how are you doing if it is just I'm fine or okay? And how do you, maybe this is a secondary, introduce the topic of race if either you haven't broached the subject before, if I don't want to say if your kids are oblivious, but if they're I can't imagine, especially teenagers, not seeing anything on social media today. But I mean, again, I don't want to presuppose or assume. What's the next step, and then how do you introduce it if it's not being seen?
Right. So my kids are flipped. My
Mm,
daughter, she's the, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm okay."
mm,
She's that one. My son is the, he will give you every single thing he's feeling.
everything.
So my kids are backwards. But
That's
again,
funny.
what I counter when I do get that kind of brick wall, "Oh, okay, okay," or that one sentence, or whether,
Right.
is I then share how I'm feeling.
Mm,
I then share, "Okay, well, I'm glad you're okay, because you know what? I have been struggling with what is happening right now in Minneapolis, and I wanted to take some time to talk to you about it, because I figured if it was bothering me,
mm.
and I was struggling with it, that you may be too.
That's
And
so good.
if you're not struggling with it, I still want to talk to you about this, because this situation," and then that's just how you frame it.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
I I then let her know, because this is usually my daughter, the one that does
Mhm.
gives me one word answers, how I'm feeling, to maybe open that line of communication up for her to then share with me. For little kids, or for kids who may have not seen the video or know
Right.
what's going on, then that's when you introduce that. You say, "Well, there is a disturbing video of a Black man that looks like your uncle, or looks like your dad, or looks like whoever in your family member,
Right.
Black male, and this is what happened, and a lot of people are upset about it,"
Mhm.
and just kind of, frame it in that way. If you are a white person, and of course you can't say, "And they look like your uncle," or "They
Right.
look like
Right.
your," then you can say just that there was a Black man who, on camera, was killed by a police officer, or police officers,
Hmm.
and um, people are really upset about it, and they should be. This is the thing, though,
Mm.
that should be in for white parents especially. People are upset, and they should be. You should somewhere in your narrative validate the pain that people are feeling.
Mm. Oh,
You should make sure that they understand that that pain is not overreacting. That pain is not it's not just something that just came from nothing. That pain
right.
is from Emmett Till. That pain is from Trayvon Martin. That pain is from Rodney King and like that
Years
pain,
and yeah,
years and
centuries.
years in the making, hundreds, and
Yeah.
it's still happening. So it's important that you, when you're sharing that, saying that people are upset and they should be upset.
Yeah.
Not people are upset and they should be rioting, because rioting and protesting are two different things. And I hope that no one ever puts that in the same category. But
Mm.
there are people that are protesting because they're upset, and they should be upset because that is wrong. It should be said in that conversation that the behavior of those police officers are wrong.
Yeah. That's, I mean, you said so much there. And I hear a call to action is what I hear in all of that. I think in some way I hear don't be silent, right? But more than that, and God bless social media. You and I both live and work with social media, but it's not enough. And I had a friend the other day say, people don't get on social media to talk. They get on social media to scream. A lot of times people get on social media and they don't want to have a conversation. They just want to shout their point of view. What but at the same time, I think the average everyday person, for lack of a better word, wants to at least do something so they feel like they'll put up a social media post or whatever it is. What are some ways that we can actually act beyond? So we're talking to our kids,
Mhm.
we want to do more, right? So at a grassroots level, what are some of those things that we should be doing, especially, when we are in relationship with people of color? And like you said, I mean, could you even talk about that? I just saw the term, I don't want to say it wrong, BIPOC. So I think it's Black, Indigenous, People of Color is now a term that I'm seeing being used. Can we just break down what is even the right term to say in this Black Lives Matter movement, where you also don't want to exclude if we don't say brown, what, can you just talk about that?
Well, in terms of whether it's Black or African American or this or that or whatever new phrase or whatever that's coming up, I think again, you ask the person,
Hmm.
what what do you want to be referred to as, right?
Yeah.
Um, because if you have a transgendered person or you have somebody, you ask them, okay, what what would you like to be um, identified, quote, if you
Right.
want to be
Right.
identified as something. But ask the question. I I had a friend 2 weeks ago say, so I heard some people say they don't like the term African American, and it's something that we've been using all this time. What do you think about that? What do you like to be called? And I said, look, girl, I'm black. You black. I'm black. With a capital B, right? With a capital B, I'm Black. That's how I like to be referred to as. But I know some people that don't mind being that want to be referred to as African American. Um, um, People of color. That's kind of a slippery slope, because that's lumping everybody who is not white in together as a color and not
Mm,
specifying Black. So I'm getting away from the people of color thing. I'm Black, but it's whoever's preference. So if you are a friend with someone and you have you can ask them, like, well, just so I know, just for future reference, you
right.
know, do you want to be referred to as Black? Do you want to be referred to as African American, the Indigenous, whatever it is that you want to be referred to? So that's the first thing. That's the
Okay.
thing, I think, to all of this thing, is to ask questions.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask, because you're not going to have all the answers.
Right.
And we may not have all the answers when you ask, but it's just the thought of you doing that as opposed to just assuming what what the answer is. I think that will always lend better.
And what I
Now, as
hear you saying, sorry, I don't want people to gloss over this, is that as important as it is to say Black Lives Matter and to, try to, like, again, bring a, I don't, unity sounds so trite in all of this. But we have to remember that there are individuals too. And so what works for you, what you want to be said of you, what you
Mhm.
need is going to be different from the next Black woman that I speak with.
Correct. Correct. And we're not a monolith, right?
Yeah.
We are all different. You know, we're all different shades, our
Right.
hair, like, so we're not all, it's not an all blanket one size fits all thing. And I think that's another thing, and that's another conversation for another time,
Mm-hmm.
is that, especially in Black women, all Black women are like this, or all Black, well, no, that's not true. So
Yeah.
there's some of us that want to be identified one way and some of us that don't, but just be open to asking that question. And I don't think that any Black person would be upset if you asked them how they wanted to be identified as.
Okay, good. And getting back to the action that we talked about, because it, again, it is, there isn't, and we're not, I hope people that are listening or watching hear us, we're not trying to give you a roadmap. I mean, I hope you're listening, but this isn't a steps 1, 2, 3 to fix everything today. And so oftentimes, I mean, not even just in this conversation, in life, in parenting, we wish there was a, like I think you said before, the stork doesn't drop off a manual with each
Yeah.
child. So this isn't a follow these steps for, to clear your heart. This really is, here is what two women, two friends are, know from our truths and from our lives.
Mhm.
But from your experience, what are some action steps that people can take beyond a social media post?
Number one is to amplify Black voices. You may not have, and you did this the other day with me,
Hmm.
you may not have what the perfect thing to say or what to say in this moment. We totally get that. But if you found someone that does have something poignant to say that's framed around what's going on, then you share that and you can
Yeah.
amplify that. So the amplification of Black voices and what they're going through at this time is critical and crucial, because if you really want to know the experience of being a Black mom, of a son who could potentially not make it home at night, you can go through my stream, you could pick out something that I said, and you can amplify that.
Yeah.
And it's my words, not yours. Another thing that you can do is try to find a way to get involved in your community, and that could be um, doing business with a Black business, saying, okay, I'm going to intentionally spend money or X amount of money with a Black owned business, and seek out those businesses in your community to spend those funds.
Mm.
Um, you can give to a organization that is helping fight police brutality and helping to improve the conditions and the lives of Black people in this country. So there are three ways right there.
Right. Yeah.
The fourth way, again, is to listen. Listen to what it is that we're saying and sit in it and meditate in it before you then react to it. Or
Mm.
like, if you text me and you say, Danyelle, I'm thinking of you, and I saw that your son was at a protest. I know there's a lot going on. I just want to know that, I want you to know that I'm thinking of you, or something that to that. And then I text you back that I'm in pain and that I pray for my son and that he's going through a lot, and this could very well be my son, and I'm I'm really upset and emotionally spent. Stew in that. Don't just reply
Mm.
back to me and with an answer. Like, think about what I said. Try to put yourself in my shoes. Try to see about the fact that, there is a chance, there's a higher chance that my son won't come home. Like, if both of our sons were together, there's a
Hmm.
chance that something will happen to him and nothing will happen to your son.
Yeah.
Those are the things that help, because I think when you don't look at the bigger picture and you don't look at a person who's actually going through what is happening, then you tend to kind of side swipe it and say that that's
Mm.
their problem or that's
Mm.
their issue. Or I mean, I have Black friends and I have Black colleagues and so that's not really an issue with me because
Yeah.
it's not. This is the mic drop moment, the pin drop moment.
Yeah.
It's not my job to fight or to teach you about racism.
Yeah.
I didn't create it.
Mm.
It wasn't created by me. It's your job. And I think once you frame that and once you get around that and once you soak in that and stew in that, then you will be prepared to take action, whatever that action looks like for you.
That's really good. You have moved me, and I just, I, I've always appreciated your authenticity. It's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you. And it hurts. And I'm thankful that it hurts. Like I'm thankful um, that it stirs me because it's not just about being uncomfortable. And I think I heard something, um, well, two things. One, again, we can't look to others for answers, right? I mean, it's just, as a Christian, we sometimes want other people to tell us what to do. And really, we need to go to the Lord. We need to lay it before the Lord. We need to listen to the Lord. So as you were talking, it reminded me of, I can't just put this on anyone else. I have to go to the Lord and say, Lord, what do I need to do right now? Like I need to, because that's what's going to motivate me is if it comes from an internal motivation and not just an extrinsic, I don't want to disappoint Danyelle, or I'm going to feel guilty if I don't go to this march, or right. So that's the first thing I took from that. The second thing I took from that is this conversation that Oprah has been having from when we're recording this the past 2 nights, called Where Do We Go From Here? And something that stood out to me as she was talking with multiple Black voices, from politicians to actors to activists, was it's not just enough. I think I wrote it down. I need to remember. Um, it's not enough to be um, it's not enough not to be racist. You need to be anti-racist. And that really, I feel like that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that goes along with what you were saying of, you can't just say, well, I'm not a racist, but that's not enough anymore. You have to, we can't get change if you don't charge for, like, I'm doing something to stop the racism, not just I'm not being part of it. And some of the things they were, read, listen, donate, march, vote, sit. I love even just the sit and stew. I mean, it's almost like the proverbial, someone tells you they're sick or someone tells you, something's hard, like, oh, I'll pray for you. But it's like, no, stop and do something now, or stop and don't just be so quick to respond. That whole idea of, oh my gosh, if our two sons were out on the street at that march together, you're right. Your son has an exponentially higher chance of being arrested, being hurt, getting attacked, like all of those things. And I am never going to understand what that's like unless I sit with you in that.
Mhm.
Um, there's not
Exactly.
really a question in that. It's just,
A
you're
lot.
here while I'm processing what you're saying, I guess.
Yeah. And that's I don't think that there's any Black person who'll say, I need you to reply to me in a certain type of way, well, respectfully, of course, but I need a reply right now. We
Mm-hmm.
all understand grace, right? Because
Yeah.
God knows we've given a lot of grace over these last 400 years.
Mm.
If I feel like a Black person's face should be under the word grace,
Right.
because when I see families look at a person, look, the guy is a Dylan Roof who shot up the church, and
Oh, I think
people
so.
in the
In South
church,
Carolina. Yeah.
yeah, and the family said that they forgave him. If that's not grace, I don't know what it is, you know.
Yeah.
So we understand that you're not going to have all the answers, and you're not going to have the perfect thing to say. I think at this point, it's more about your actions than what is being said out of your mouth. It's more about what it is that you're doing. Because you can tell me you care about me and you love me, and you're thankful to have my friendship, and you're so sorry that this is happening again. Or you can go spend your money at a Black-owned business. You can go vote to make sure that the people that are legislating, the people that are creating, the people that are voting these judges and everybody are people that are going to do the right thing when it's time. Um, that action is really important.
Mm.
And speaking of that, there is a individual who you may or may not know. Some people that watch this may or may not know her. And when I think about action and I think about allyship, and some people don't like the word ally, and I totally get it, but for lack of a better word, allyship, I think of her, and her name is Janice Person. She goes by JP Loves Cotton on social media. And I live in St. Louis, and in 2014, when Ferguson happened,
Mm-hmm.
she picked up the phone and said, Danyelle, I want to go to Ferguson. What do you think about that? And I said, Janice, well, it's a little rough. Uh, and I gave her some words of advice. And I saw like 2 hours later that she had went and she took pictures and she saw it for herself. And I was just in awe of the fact that she didn't have to go to that.
Mm-hmm.
She could have just watched it on TV, just like how everybody else, but she was moved to go and actually see for herself what was going on. And then the next week, we went together,
Mm.
um, and we marched together and we demonstrated together at Ferguson. And I'll never forget her wanting to take action.
Mm.
She didn't have the right. She didn't like call me and say, "Oh, Danyelle, I know you're so upset and this and that." She said, "Girl," that's how she talked. "Girl, I want to go to Ferguson. What do you think about that?" And I was like, wow. Like,
Mm.
I was the one who was at a loss for words, because not that I didn't know her heart before, because I did, but it was just coming like full circle that
Mm.
she's not just speaking about it.
Yeah.
She is it. She is personifying all the stuff that she said that she is. By doing that, she's showing me that she's about it.
Mm.
And so that's the type of thing. Now, I'm not saying that if you don't pick up and you don't go to a protest that you're not about the movement and about making
Right.
change. I'm just saying that was her way of doing it. And she could have stayed in her mostly white area and she could have just watched it on TV like everybody else. But she
Right.
said, no, I want to go. And I just had so much love and more love and respect for her because she did it.
Yeah.
And did it again, and we got to do it together, and it was just a moment that I'll always remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, and kind of circling back to how this conversation started about how to talk about this with our kids,
Mhm.
what can we do? Obviously, with younger kids, I feel like it is having those conversations, but maybe bringing them along, whether it's shopping at that Black-owned business or doing that. But what are there some other ways that you think are appropriate with our kids and teens to not just to go beyond the conversation?
Sure. So, um, Black movies, Black art, Black creative
Mm.
things. I know that now with Amazon Prime or Amazon and Netflix, they have a section of movies that documentaries and movies that share the Black experience, and some of them are suitable for children. A lot of them are. There's books. I shared on another program I was on the other day. I shared a list of books in different age groups, and I'd be more than willing to share that list
Yeah,
with you.
let's link to that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So there's books. There are just like you said, saying, "Hey, come with me to the store," and shopping like that should be normal. It shouldn't be. We should get to
Shouldn't be
the
a field trip.
where it's a normal thing to do, right? It's
Yeah.
not, oh, we're going to a Black owned place today. Like it should be a part. It should become a part of where you're taking your child regularly and they're used to going. But yeah, start taking them with you. I will tell you one of the most moving experiences, and if you can, and I know we're in COVID times, and not a lot of people are traveling, so you're kind of
Right.
limited. But what you can get out of COVID times,
Mm-hmm.
go to the National Civil Rights Museum
Mm.
in Memphis.
Yeah.
Um, I
My
will
kids
tell you.
went there last summer, actually.
Okay, okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I will tell you that no matter your age, the age of the child, that is a great place to take your
Okay.
family when it's safe.
When it's safe, yes.
When it's safe, don't do it now. But I even believe that there are some virtual tours. I think that
I
there,
think
and
you're right.
I believe I got something about. So even if you can't physically go right now, although I think you really, when you can, you should, because I just think that being there and seeing it in first person is just amazing. You can at least do maybe a virtual tour or
Yeah.
something.
And
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it was interesting even listening to the conversation last night of, I think it was Mayor Bottoms from Atlanta saying, yes, it's important. Our voices are being heard more than ever, but, Black people are dying at again, an exponentially higher rate from COVID. So be smart. If you're going to protest, get a test. And so I think the fact that you're saying, like, we don't have to just sit in our house and say, well, I can't do anything right now. There are so many conversations being had. There are so many museums that like you said, are giving virtual tours.
Yeah.
There's
Hmm.
books, there's still a lot to do, even if you're trying to, respect the law, whatever the advisories that are out right now. There's a lot to do, but that was another point that was brought up, is that they were saying for the first time, Black people can unapologetically say that we're angry, frustrated, and hurting. And I think that was Mayor Bottoms that said that as well. And so I have to imagine there's a freedom that comes with that, but also a charge, of knowing we may not have this opportunity again, or just to know that we don't want to waste this opportunity. I think in any type of recovery, and I'll just kind of make a blanket approach here as someone that's in counseling. I know my counselor had even said to me, what have you learned from this last instance that we were talking about that you can take with you so that in 5 years we're not having the same conversation? And there was
Hmm.
a bishop that ended the conversation last night that said, you know, blessed are those who mourn. The Bible said, blessed are those who mourn. And so let's not be so quick to try to heal that we don't grieve. And that, especially in the situation I'm in now, just, it just hit me like a brick wall of I'm so quick to, as I've said before, give me the
Hmm.
Band-Aid, give me the potion, the serum, the make it all better. It's uncomfortable to sit in the sadness, to sit in the pain, to look at these images, to hear those stories. How do we, beyond what we've said, how do we grieve
Hmm.
well in this moment?
Well, I don't know if there's such thing as grieving well, because I think grieving is different for like it looks
Yeah.
different to everybody. It's not a one size fits all thing. Um, but grieving is also like when you grieve, you are saying that something happened that made you sad.
Mm,
Something happened, or something was here and now it's no longer here, or
yeah.
something has changed. So when you grieve, you are accepting reality.
Yeah.
When you don't grieve, then you're like,
Mm,
oh, it's gonna be fine. It's nothing. But when you grieve, you are saying, okay, this is the reality of the situation,
yeah.
and I need to process it and accept it. So for me, grieving is honoring George and all the other men and women, Black men and women who have lost their lives due to a police officer or security,
Yeah.
who, yeah, most of the time it's a police officer, but, a neighborhood, Trayvon Martin, it was like a neighborhood watch person.
Right.
Um, it's grieving for each and every one of those people and making them matter.
Mm,
And saying their name. I know on babynames.com, I don't know if you saw that, but
Mm.
babynames.com, which is a site I've never been to, but I guess it ranks like the popularity of names based on
Mhm.
like birth certificate statistics and all that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
So the other day, and I don't know if it's still up, at the top, like when you first go, they have all the names of the people that have been killed.
Wow.
And it starts with Emmett Till, but and it's longer than the list that we think, because there's
Oh,
people
of
on that
course.
list that have not even didn't make a hashtag or didn't make
Exactly.
worldwide, you know? So it's a long list. And I took the time the other day to actually read each and every one of those names,
Mm.
some of which I had never heard of before. Um, say their names. Um, Understand that they lost their life senselessly. Understand that George Floyd had supposedly a counterfeit $20 bill and was killed, but yet there are white men who shoot up schools and are apprehended just fine
Mhm.
and are given a day in court.
Mm.
Like, can we just have our day in court? Like, why
Mm.
are they the judge, jury, and executioner of all this thing?
Yeah.
So grieving to me is thinking about each and every person who lost their life senselessly, and then saying, I don't want to add another person to that list. And what is it that I'm going to do to hopefully prevent another person being added to that list? Because one person on the list is too much.
Too
We
many.
got a whole we got to like it's too
Mm.
much. So yeah, grieve. Allow yourself to grieve, but allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to process, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
And I appreciate that you. Oh.
yeah, I was just saying, I said, and I think that from there you can start to build what making a change looks like,
Mm.
that's gonna look like to you.
Yeah, it's so thoughtfully said, and I appreciate that you pointed out that there are so many names we don't know. I know there's a mother here in Tennessee that lost her son to, from what I understand, to police violence in 2017. It didn't make national news. It didn't, like you said, there's so many more, as with anything, right? We never know the full story, and we don't know all the cases. And so it is just a representation, but it does represent a life and a family, brothers, sisters, father, mother, children. um, it's a lot. Thank you for being so thoughtful in just taking the time with us. Our time is running out, but I don't want to let you go without being reflective. And can you just think, what would you say to your 10-year-old, 20-year-old self about that, knowing what you know now? How would you reflect backwards?
I would say to her that while your life is pretty rosy and pretty happy, and you are making strides personally and professionally, always keep in mind of people's sacrifices,
Mm.
struggles, tribulations, because that is why you are able to soar right now.
Mm.
Don't ever forget where you came from. Don't ever think that you're not worthy or your voice is not worthy. You are your ancestors' wildest dreams.
Mm.
And with that, it's time for you to take over the world.
Girl, that's more than just a frame on the wall, isn't it? I mean, I see you living it. And so you are your ancestors' wildest dreams. I mean, you are a beautiful personification of that. I guess looking forward, 10, 20 years, if you could talk to yourself in the future, how do you hope personally to still grow, and not just, again, not just the bumper sticker of what you hope, that I'll do or that our society will do, but how do you personally hope to grow and in the future?
I I want to grow as a conduit for other Black women to
Mm,
be able to share their experiences and um, share their stories.
mm,
I've been thinking a lot about, okay, I've got the cubiclechick.com and I've got a great platform, but there's so much more work to do, especially in my own community and especially amongst
right.
Black women. So, my future self, I hope, will be able to get off her butt and finally do to put into to motion what I've been wanting to do, and that has been a series of conferences aimed at Black women from a personal, professional standpoint. And I've been putting that off for years. And so I hope that my future self will have already, fast forward 10, 20 years, I've already gotten that in motion, and it's something that helps inspire other people. So
I
that's what I
love it.
hope.
Well, I hope we can champion that. And I mean, speaking of, like you say, that a conference for Black women, can I, as a white woman, still walk into that arena? Is that a place, a Black church, a Black, whatever it is,
Mhm.
if I want to be a part of, is that appropriate so that I can lend my voice? Or is it saying, you know what, there's other things, there's other places you can go? What is the right response in that?
Well, for me, for what I was talking about and what I've always wanted to do, it is for Black women. And I know there's
Okay.
going to be some people say, well, how are you saying we all got to come together?
No,
But we
it's
have some issues and experiences that you'll never have. And
okay.
I always want that to be a safe space. And that event,
Gotcha.
hopefully I get it done, will be that. But as far as other things like churches, I mean, God says, come as you are. So I don't think there's any church that's going to say, white woman, get over a church. And there's a lot of events, but I think mine will specifically be just for Black women, just because, like I said, there's things
Sure.
that we need to talk about and organize that really don't have anything to do with you, and it's not being separatist, and it's just there's some conversations that we need to have amongst ourselves.
And if there's
So
anything I've learned
that
from
is
you, yeah, if there's anything I've learned, it's to ask, right? It's always okay to ask.
my Absolutely. And I'm glad to have been a part of this. I'm glad to have had this discussion with you. I think I would love to see more discussions like this.
Mhm.
Um Interracial discussions where it's not just all Black people or just all white people, but just a
Right.
community of people coming together to make change. Thank you, friend, for doing this, because it's really important.
Well, I thank you. Like I said, you've made me think. I hope we've made a lot of other people think, and not, like I said, not to give a prescription, but to really have them reflect and ruminate. And like you said, stew and stir and all of those things that make us uncomfortable, but ultimately lead us to be better people that can create a better society and a better world. So, Danyelle Little, thank you, friend. It's been a pleasure. And I just hope to keep championing you and your family along the way.
Thank you so much, Sammy.
Okay.